Quiet quitting. Is it a do or is it a don't? Today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about, should you be quiet quitting? What does it mean? What does that look like? Or is there an alternative? Welcome back to Everyday Executive. My name is Kelly, and Everyday Executive is a safe place for you to get tips and tricks for your life and your career questions. So quiet quitting, again, is it a do or is it a don't? Well, according to Gallup.com, at least half of the U.S. workforce is quiet quitting. And according to NBC interview with Elise Friedman, we really need to define it first. And what she says is quiet quitting is defined as employees are making a choice to not go above and beyond their job. It doesn't mean they're not doing their job. It just means they're not going above and beyond. What they really want, she goes on to say, is they want work-life balance and are willing to change jobs to get it. You may have heard the Great Resignation. So what does that mean? That means they're looking for some sort of work-life balance, right? Maybe they're feeling overworked. They're feeling like their career or their jobs have taken them away from their families, or maybe they've seen it in their parents. And so they're looking and reevaluating their life in how do they regain that. But that's not all positive. We're also seeing Kevin O'Leary in a CNBC video went on to say, people who shut down their laptop at 5, they don't work for me. He went on to say, I hope they work for my competitors. Those are pretty strong words, right? I mean, those are pretty strong words when you're the person on the receiving end. To some, they may be offended and said, you're right. I'm not going to work for you. I'm not going to put my career ahead of my life and ahead of my personal life. And there's some truth to that. And then there's others that are saying, you know what? Yeah, if you're going to work, you're getting paid, you should do a job. And if we ask you to go above and beyond, you should. So what's the right answer? Frankly, in my opinion, it's both. One way you can do this. So what is some of the solutions to work through this? You need to set boundaries. Work-life balance, what I have found, isn't necessarily equal every single day. It's not every single day I'm going to have equal number of hours of 8 or 9 hours, and I'm going to have equal enough hours for my family or my hobbies or whatever that looks like. That just isn't feasible, frankly, in anything. And it's not feasible on your personal life as well. So if you want to leave for your child's extracurricular activity, basketball game, theater, whatever that looks like, maybe you want to leave early and you want to leave at 3 p.m. To go to that game. But in exchange for that, maybe you need to stay a little bit later, a different day, to get caught up on a project. In my opinion, it's not always equal. And so to have this mindset that I must have this equal box of hours isn't necessarily always the best way to get work-life balance. So then rather than taking a bare minimum approach or kind of half doing the job, really commit to what value can I add to the company when I'm there. Be fully present. Be talking with your supervisor about what's important to you. What value are you providing and what value is important to you in your personal life? For me, it was important for me to go to some of my kids' events. I have, for those who are not aware, I have 2 college-age kids and I also have a high school, but they were very involved and still are, frankly, involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. And so I knew I couldn't go to everything. That's not feasible as well. But I was really selective in what was important for me to go to and to be present in my kids' lives. You heard me talk about my mistake when my oldest was in middle school, and I did not prioritize that very well. And I took a step back and really thought, okay, it's important to me to have a good work-life balance, but it's also important to me to have a high-performing career and for my own self and to be present with my kids. So what can we do to make that happen? And so having those discussions with your company and adding value instead of sitting back and kind of having this, I would call it box of hours, really will create more work-life balance for you anyway. One of the things to be careful of if you're quiet quitting is be careful of economic downturn. According to news.sky.com in their November issue, quiet firing has become a thing. Microsoft, for example, reveals that 85% of bosses said hybrid working made it difficult to feel confident that they're actually being productive, that their employees are actually being productive. So be really careful in, especially if you're in a remote work or a hybrid environment, that you don't become just a number. You want to make sure that you're being seen as a valued employee to your company. So how do you do that? One way to do that, and we've talked about this in the past, is to be that go-to person or be that easy button or yes person. And think about it in this way. If you're struggling with how to do that, really think about, who do you choose when you want to work with somebody? Do you choose the person who's really sitting down next to you, adding value, really working together on the project and is willing to do the work? Or do you choose the person who said, sorry, it's 5 minutes to 5, and so I'm clocking out now, and we'll have to just work on that project a different time? You're probably, if you're honest, you're going to choose the person who's willing to work with you. And so be that person. Be that person for the company. Be that person for your supervisor that they know they can count on you when there's work to be done for that company that adds value. Then you have trust built that you can have that conversation to say, hey, can I leave at noon today? I'm going to take my kids to the dentist. Or, hey, can I come in late today because I really had a late night game because of my kid, and so I really would like to come in late. If you're present and you're adding value and you're having those discussions with your company, more than likely, they're going to want you to do that. And when there's an economic downturn, and I'll call it the quiet firing or layoffs or things that are occurring in the economy, they're going to think about you as keeping you on with the value before they're going to think about the person that maybe doesn't answer an email after 5 p.m., maybe isn't as adding as much value or is quiet quitting in their work life environment. And I understand that this is not about being dumped on. This is not about going and just being completely burned out. If that's happening, we'll discuss that and how we can work through that. But I would say that saying I'm always going to work 9 to 5 or whatever those hours are isn't necessarily adding the most value to you or your company as well. Be really wary that you can create a habit of quitting. Habits are formed. And what does that mean? Some of the best ways that you fill your purposeful bucket, or some of the best ways that you really learn how to do things and work further in your personal life and your career, comes from gritting through those challenges. It comes from really digging deep and saying, okay, this is really overwhelming. This is a huge challenge. How are we going to work through this? Or how am I going to work through this? And an example, like I said, we talked about projects and we talked about your career life, but it can go for weight loss as well. When it's 30 below zero outside and it's really cold and it's dark, do you always get up and go work out at the gym? Sometimes you probably do, sometimes you don't. I'll tell you though, those days that you do creates grit. It creates it and makes it easier the next time because you have habits that you're forming to get up and go that will make it easier the next time your brain wants to say, no, go, stay in bed. And so the one thing I would say is, if you're talking about, creating a habit of quiet and quitting and being disengaged, that is a habit that bleeds into other things. And so I would caution you to really think about, do I have the grit to push through this? Can I make changes? What do I have in control? Because you are in control of your behaviors. You may not be in control of what your boss does. You may not be in control of what your company does always, but you are in control of how you behave, the habits you form, and how you react to those things. And so really think about those things as you're working through your decision on whether to quiet quit or not. Really think about too, what are your goals in life? What are your career goals? How are you going to get there? How does quiet quitting, and that means, I understand that means going above and beyond, how does doing that and not doing that get you the goals that you've set? What are those goals? And so really think about, is this getting you the next step that you need? It's not about being perfect. It's not about any of that. It's about making progress. And frankly, there's going to be days where you don't go above and beyond. There's days that happens to everyone. I do as well. We are humans, right? That's part of the behavior. But I don't perceive that as quiet quitting. I perceive the not going above and beyond as every single day I am just clocking in at 9, I'm working and I'm doing my job. I'm doing what's being asked of me, and at 5 p.m., for example, I'm done. That isn't always going to get you the life and career goals that you'd like. And so really think about that. Is that something you do every single day? Or is that just something you do on occasion? And that's okay. Really be proactive. If you are feeling, that you're getting overwhelmed and you're just being burned out, be proactive. Again, it's not necessarily about, going above and beyond, but it is about taking initiative and it is about taking ownership. What do you need, again, like we talked about, to set those boundaries? What do you need to make the next progress to feel better in your company so you're not feeling like you need to quiet quit or you're just burned out and just are kind of done with it after 5? Try to achieve a win-win. Most things happen when there's a breakdown between the company or your supervisor in particular, your manager, and you. That's typically where things kind of can break down. So find some solutions. Find some solutions, again, by sitting down and talking with your supervisor about what's important to you. Find out what's important to them and how you can add value to them. And then you can have that discussion about how they can add value for you as well. So try to find those win-wins as you work through that. How do you fill your purposeful bucket? Look, we've talked about this. Your purposeful bucket is filled when you have accomplished things. And it's not always about accomplishing the day-to-day things. It's often by the unexpected, by the challenges, by the achievements that you gained by gritting through it. I kind of talk about this myself, and I talked about my exercise routine. I never regret going. I always regret not going. Maybe always is a strong word, but I would say I can say strongly, I never regret going. And so think about that in your life with your career as well. What are you going to regret if you don't do XYZ today? What are you going to regret a year from now, 5 years from now? What does that look like? How are you filling your purposeful bucket, and what steps are you taking to get to there? So really think about that as well, because one of the most concerning stats that I have, frankly, as a CEO is, according to Gallup of this last year in April, employee engagement declined from 36% to 24%. That's more significant to me than not going above and beyond with the quiet quitting, because that means there is a lack of disengagement. There's a lack in that communication and that wanting to win for each other in the company. Because if the company does well, you'll do well. And I think that's also something to think about. When you're working for a company, if they do well, then you will do well. If they don't do well, then you're not going to do well, because that's when the economic downturn happens. And that's when the quiet firing happens, or the layoffs happen, or disengagement occurs more. So you have control over your engagement with that company. You have control in learning more. You have control in having that communication. You have control in reaching out to find out, where can you fill your bucket more? Maybe it's a different division of that company. Maybe it's a different area or a different project. But you can have control over having that conversation. You can't control what's decided, but you can control your reaction to that and how you communicate with that. So be positive. Frame your boundaries and what you are doing, not what you're not doing. Sometimes that's just a mindset, frankly. A mindset instead of worrying about what somebody else has, or really seeing what other people do, or what other hours somebody else has, reframe that in a positive way of, what am I doing? How am I reacting? What value am I giving? And that will really, and lean into those core values and those core responsibilities where you deliver that value, and really reset your mind. Cultivate work friendships. I know that's challenging when people are hybrid and working from home. So it's going to take more effort to do that. But it might be making sure all cameras are on. It might be, hey, I know we're working hybrid, but is there a way we can meet for coffee Friday morning and do it that way? If you have control on some of those discussions. Cultivating work friendships makes it more fun. And frankly, it's the antidote to burnout. If you feel like you're having fun with a friend or with colleagues, it really can be the antidote to burnout, because that's where you can use humor to de-escalate. It's where you're filling your bucket with, we're really beings of wanting to be together overall. And so it really can fill that bucket. Don't underestimate that. And last but not least, if you really are in a culture that isn't filling your bucket, that is, when you have those conversations, maybe you're still being treated in a way to burn out, I still would encourage you to not quiet quit. You never know when the next opportunity will come that you're going to need that reference. You never know when the next opportunity will come that is the job that springboards you to your next goals. You really don't know. And I've talked about my journey, that I had no idea that a project that I had worked on was going to allow me to talk about that project and spring me to the board, to the CEO that I am now. I had no idea that was going to happen. And so I had no idea of that when I left management in my early 20s, while I had my first child, that I was going to be asked by folks a few years later to come back and redo it. And that would springboard me again to my career that I'm in now as a CEO or as an executive. You don't know when those opportunities are going to occur. So don't quiet quit. Look for other opportunities. And that may be leaving outside the company. This is not about saying you got to stay and you got to, do that every single time. If you've really put in the effort to have those boundaries set, to have those communications, and you're still finding that you're being treated in a way that's not making you feel good about yourself, then you should look for another company and another job. But I wouldn't quiet quit. I would keep doing what you're doing. Adding value, remembering your why, remembering how this could impact you in the future, and leave on good terms. So that really will help you in the long run as you work through your life and your career goals. So should you quiet quit? What do you think? Please leave a comment below if you think you should quiet quit, and do's and don'ts. I would love to hear your opinions. If you like that, it really would help me if you subscribe to my channel and gave me a like. That really helps the algorithm push this kind of information out to more people, so we can have more of these kind of videos and these discussions. Thank you for watching, and we'll talk soon.